Welcome to the Community Grief Center and to our Understanding Grief class. I'll be your guide tonight. I'm Dennis Camper. I was a pastor for 25 years, a hospice chaplain for 13, and now I've been making these presentations through the Grief Center for the last 8 years. We use a lot of material here by Dr. Alan Wolfelt. He is with the Center for Loss and Life Transition over in Fort Collins. And he's written many books. One of those is called Understanding Your Grief. And what I've done is taken the material from his book and used that as the basis, and then added my own illustrations, examples from my life's ministry. This is a 5-part series. This is the last one in the series. And tonight we're going to be looking at committing to the road ahead. I know that all of you are at different places in your grief journey. And maybe you are at a place where you can kind of look back and you can tell that things are starting to get better. You still have your setbacks, but you know you're making progress. But maybe your grief is newer and you're not there yet. You're wondering if you're ever going to get through this or how you're going to do that. Our goal tonight is to offer you hope that yes, it does get better. I want to talk about 5 areas that I hope you can commit to help in that healing process. And that you could commit to doing something in each one of these areas. People often wonder, when will my life get back to normal? And my answer is never. It's never going to be normal without the person that you lost. But we do talk about a new normal. And Dr. Wolfelt likes to use the term reconciliation. We use that term in banquet. You know, we try to reconcile our checking book with what the bank says we have. Does anybody ever have trouble doing that? I thought so. In this case, we're trying to reconcile our former way of life with the new one, the life with our loved one previously, and now our life without them. And that can be as hard and as frustrating as trying to reconcile a bank book. It takes time and it takes work, but it can be done. Here are some specific areas I'd like to ask you to commit to make that possible. The first is the physical. First, we'll talk about the symptoms with each category, and then I will give some suggestions how to deal with those symptoms. Emotional stress can show up in physical ways. One of the most common areas is lack of sleep and just feeling totally exhausted. Sometimes people have trouble getting to sleep, but it seems more often they fall asleep, but then they wake up after a few hours and can't get back to sleep. You should be aware that during your grief journey, your body actually needs more sleep, more rest than usual. There are other numerous physical symptoms. As it's said, we have issues with our tissues, such as muscle aches and pains, shortness of breath, tightness in our throat or chest, feelings of emptiness in our stomach, digestive problems, headaches, increased allergy reactions, changes in appetite, which can result in either a weight gain or a weight loss. These are all ways our body can react to a loss. I'm going to mention the importance here of talking about our feelings, because a lot of people find that when they have repressed feelings, that it shows up physically in their body. There was a time when I did not know how to express anger. I'd been really brought up not to express it. One of my mother's favorite sayings was, "Now don't get mad." So I repressed my anger. So much so that sometimes I didn't even know that I was angry. But I also had problems with ulcers. And I would feel my stomach just being in a knot. And I eventually learned that when that was happening, I was angry. And I learned how to recognize anger, to express it, and now I don't get ulcers anymore. The point is, it's going to come out in one way or another. If we don't express our feelings, they will show up in physical ways. Our physical condition affects our emotional recovery. When I was working with hospice, one of the things I learned was that taking care of physical pain and discomfort always came first. Once people get their physical pain under control, then they're ready to look at other areas such as the social and the spiritual and so on. But if they're struggling physically, it's hard to even think about other areas. And so if a person is too tired, then facing grief seems almost unbearable. You know, there's a reason it's called grief work. It is work, a lot of work. And if a person is too tired, that seems almost unbearable to face. So one of the suggestions is to eat healthy. Our eating habits often change when a loved one dies. Especially true for a spouse, I think. My mother-in-law always fixed meals for my father-in-law. He was one of those that worked out of the home and was at home 6 o'clock. And she would have the meal on the table ready for him. Well, he died suddenly in an accident at age 69. He was still working. And now she found it hard to fix a meal for just one person. And she found it hard to sit down at the table like they always did. And so she would just grab something and stand by the kitchen counter and eat it. People often turn to comfort foods, which usually are not the healthiest choices. Some people eat more under stress. And so if that's the case, it's good to eat lower calorie food. Some people eat less under stress and almost have to force themselves to eat. And so in that case, it's good to make sure that what they do eat is healthy. And get adequate rest. Sometimes you might wake up thinking about all the things you have to do, paperwork, financial stuff, and so on. One woman told me that she would wake up during the middle of the night thinking about all the things that she had to do. And then she would tell herself, I can't do anything right now anyway. The offices are all closed. And so I might as well go back to sleep. And it's good to have a sleep pattern, to go to bed the same time, get up the same time, try to keep that as normal as possible. Getting exercise is also important. Doing something physical, especially that will help to make us a little bit tired, can help us sleep better. And getting out of the house to do something productive, you know, whether it's working in the garden or mowing grass or shoveling snow in the winter, all those things can help overcome that feeling of lethargy. It's also important to exercise our mind and our spirit. I mean, let's face it, most people don't have time for grief. They were busy enough with what they were doing before this. It's probably hard to find time to relax and read or do a hobby. But it's even more important now to find something that you can enjoy. Now, this doesn't fit any of these categories, so I'm just going to slip it in here. But it's good to let your doctor know that you're dealing with grief. Now, if your spouse died and he or she was your spouse's doctor also, they will know that. But sometimes the doctor won't know about all the things that you're working through. And very often the physical things that you go to the doctor for are caused by or increased by this stress that's going on in your life. And so be sure to let them know. In the cognitive area, the symptoms here, one of those is that we feel like we're losing our minds. For example, people told me how they would be out driving and they suddenly realized that they had absent-mindedly got right past where they were intending to go. Or they're in a different part of town than they expected to and don't know how they got there. Does that sound familiar? Don't be surprised if you struggle with short-term memory problems, or have trouble just making simple decisions, or are just completely organized and think that you're going crazy. Early in your grief, especially, allow yourself the freedom to not think too much. Don't worry about trying to get tasks done. It may be a good time to take people up on their offer to help you with things. We're afraid that it's always going to be this way. We don't understand ourselves. We've never really felt this way before. And so we wonder, is this the new me? Well, you're not going to stay this way. Your thinking ability does come back. And so give yourself a break. And don't worry about not being so clear-headed right now. Here are some suggestions to help you feel more organized. You could ask yourself 2 questions. The first is, what do I want? Now that the person you love is gone, what do you want to do with your time? Where do you want to live? Who do you want to socialize with? Who do you want to be near? And then the second question is, what is wanted of me? Who needs you? Who depends upon you? What are you good at? What skills and experiences do you have that you might be able to use to help others? Why were you put here on this earth? Now, maybe those sound like those big philosophical questions that you're not prepared to answer right now, but you can answer to yourself on a daily basis and help focus on the here and now. And so, what do I want from my life today? What is wanted of me today? Living in the moment can help cope with grief. Make a list of short-term goals for the next 3 months. For example, writing thank you notes, maybe working on a memory book, or just taking care of all the paperwork that's necessary. And then make a list of longer-term goals. Be realistic and kind to yourself as you consider what's feasible and then what would only add to more stress in your life. And try to include some just for fun goals. I know of hospice patients who were sick for some time, and so their caregivers, their family members, had to put off doing things that they enjoyed doing. One patient and his wife I worked with really enjoyed going to Black Hawk to gamble. As he would put it, I have to go and make my deposit. But because of his severe COPD, he couldn't breathe at that altitude. And so they hadn't gone for several years. After he died, his wife looked forward to going back there. And if that was your situation, that you couldn't do some of the things that you used to love to do, now that you are freed from this caregiving responsibility, what would you like to do? Set some goals for yourself. Avoid making major changes. Sometimes you may be forced to make a significant change after a death. For example, if you have to sell your house for financial reasons. I've known people who worked for a family member who died, and then that business ended with their death. They had to find different employment. But while it's good to have goals, it can be a mistake to march forward too quickly. Sometimes people try to ease the pain and move forward by making major changes that they regret later on. Things like moving to a different city or breaking ties with all the people they've had and having to make all new relationships. The death of your loved one is a major change. And so don't make other changes for a year or 2. And then count your blessings. Maybe you're not feeling real good about your life right now. You're feeling very unfortunate and asking, why me, Lord? Kinds of questions. And you may feel that the whole universe has conspired against you. That's okay. This is the pits. But you're still blessed. Think of all the things that you have to be thankful for yet. This is not to deny the hurt, because the hurt needs to take precedence right now. But it may help you to think about the things you have left, things that make your life worth living yet. The emotional area. And one of the symptoms is we have trouble accepting the reality of the death. And maybe this sounds silly. Well, of course I know they died. Well, we can know something in our head and not in our heart. And so you might expect your loved one to walk through the door, to call on the phone, even touch you. You think you hear them in the next room, or you see them down the aisle in the store. What it takes is gently confronting the reality that someone you care about is gone physically and will never come back into your life again. This is a process, not an event. It may occur over weeks or months. It's not an aha moment. You can move back and forth between protesting and accepting the reality of the death. Our emotions are jumbled and hard to sort out. We're not sure sometimes what it is we're feeling. Or maybe we feel angry all the time. Just the smallest thing sets us off. Or we go between feeling fine and suddenly in the dumps, like somebody threw a switch. We know this is not our normal self. And what is more, we don't particularly like this new person. So the suggestion is to draw a grief diagram. The death of your loved one has probably stirred up all kinds of emotions in you, emotions you haven't felt before or haven't felt for a long time. All these thoughts, feelings inside of you might make you think you're going crazy. But you're not going crazy, you're grieving, and that's normal. But sometimes corralling all of these thoughts and feelings into one place can make them seem more manageable. Now you could just make a list of all the things that you identify, but you can also use them in a diagram form. And so in the center is your grief, and radiating out from it are all the reasons, thoughts and feelings since the death. And so you could put a different feeling or thought in each smaller circle at the end of the line. For example, how long? Lonely, afraid, if that's what you're feeling. And then you could jot a few notes around the space of those circles and say why it is that you're feeling that way. Putting it down on paper and organizing your feelings in one place can help you to see that you are not going crazy. And then it'll help to talk to somebody that you can trust and to explain to them what it is that you have done. Talking may help you define and refine for yourself, too, what you're feeling. You know, I've had people come to me for counseling different times, and they do all the talking. And then at the end, they will say, "Thank you very much, you've been very helpful. I didn't say anything." But by talking, they were able to sort through the things themselves. And then reach out and touch. Physical contact with other human beings can be healing. You know, sometimes the person who died, and this is especially true if it was a spouse, that was our main source for touch. Is there someone else we can hug and get hugs from? There was one man I know in his 80s who wore a tag, like a name tag, and when you got up closer to see what it said, it was, "I'm a hugaholic and I need a fix." Maybe you can hold a baby. Some people have found massage therapy helpful just to get that feeling of touch. Or listen to music. Music can be helpful because it accesses our feelings, both happy and sad. Sometimes it might be a song that makes you think of your loved one. Maybe it was the song that was playing when you first met them, and one that you like to dance to. Or it could be an unfamiliar song, but the words are saying exactly what you were feeling. At first, maybe you can't listen to music. Some people have told me that it was just too much for them. But as time goes on, hopefully you will find it helps to keep the memory of the person alive in your heart. And then schedule something that gives you pleasure each day. Often people who are mourning need something to look forward to, some reason to get out of bed in the morning. It's hard to look forward to each day when you know there's going to be a lot of pain and sadness in it. And so to counterbalance that sadness, try to plan something each day that you know you will enjoy. Even plan it the day before so that you can look forward to it. It could be reading, baking, having lunch with a friend, going for a walk, playing computer games, whatever it is that you know gives you some enjoyment. In the spiritual area, one of the symptoms is that your faith is affected by grief. When you're torn apart by grief, you may have lots of spiritual questions that there just don't seem to be answers for. Where's God? Is there a God? Why is this happening to me? Is life ever worth living again? Some people have a strong faith in spiritual life, and that's what gets them through a time like this. Others may struggle. And contemplating a spiritual life in the midst of it all may be very hard. It's also true that former faith practices may be difficult. People who've been regular churchgoers often find it hard to go back to church. Maybe you had the funeral service at the church, and it's just a painful reminder. You go there and you just see that casket sitting at the front. Maybe you always went to church together, and now it's so hard to be there by yourself, a reminder that you are alone. Maybe the other person was your spiritual leader, the one you went to for hope and encouragement. And so, suggestions: find new ways of expressing that faith. One could be create a sacred mourning space. Yes, you need other people, but nurturing yourself can also include a place where you can just go to be by yourself. Maybe it's a special place in your house or your yard where you can go, a place that's just dedicated to the needs of the soul. And you can go there several times a week to meditate and to honor your journey through grief. Maybe it's at the graveside of your loved one. I know a lot of people who find it helpful to just go to the cemetery and to talk to their loved one as if they were there. Begin each day with a meditation or prayer. For a lot of grieving people, waking up in the morning and dreading the day is the hardest part of the week. And so starting off the day with tears and with a heavy heart, day after day, is so draining. And maybe at first, that's all you can do. But after a while, it may help to set the tone for the day by saying a little prayer and meditating. So for instance, you could say each morning, "Thank you, God, for giving me this day. Help me to appreciate it, make it count." Or you could say, "Today I will live and love fully. Today I will appreciate my life." Visit the great outdoors. Many people find it restorative to be able to spend time outside. Different people have told me over my lifetime, this is my church. This is where I feel God's presence the most. Dr. Wolfelt says, Mother Nature knows more about kicking back than all the stress management experts on the planet, and she charges far less. We are blessed here in Colorado to have so many beautiful places to go to. And maybe there's a favorite place that you and your loved one like to go. Could be a beautiful spot in the mountains, or as simple as sitting in a lawn chair in your own backyard. Remember the person who died. It could be some kind of memorial service. A few years ago, my aunt died after struggling with Alzheimer's for several years. Now, she lived in Florida, and I wasn't able to go to the funeral. But she and my uncle also had a cabin in Upper Michigan, which was built on the land actually where my grandparents once had a house. And so it was a special place for the whole family. The summer after she died, my uncle and his family organized a family reunion for the whole extended family. And since it was planned in advance, so many of the family members could come. And so we had a short service. We buried her ashes under a tree that they planted. And it was a very touching ceremony. And it was also a wonderful way for me and my cousins, many of those who also weren't able to come to the funeral, to say our goodbyes. There are other similar things you could do. There was one woman who attended these sessions a few years ago, and her son died, and she had a bench made for him and placed it in a cemetery over in Fort Collins where her son was buried. One woman told me that she listened to the recording of her husband's service every year on the anniversary of that funeral. You could do something special on their birthday, something that they would have liked, enjoyed doing. Or get together as family and friends and just tell stories about the loved one. Or it could be something as simple as keeping a reminder object around. There's a poem here called His Gray Tweed Cap by Catherine A. Short. I laid out all of his clothes while funeral guests ate eggs and toast and snapped suitcases closed. I urged grown sons and daughters, grandsons too, to take his cardigans, his neckties, socks, and shoes, but leave the gray tweed cap Dad always wore. Sweatband sufficiently stained, dirt smudged bill, it retains his special smell. I'll keep his cap. Hang it by my back door in case he needs it when he comes in dreams. Snatches it from its peg and heads outside to mow the lawn or fix a broken chair. It's more precious to me than a photograph. I'll keep his cap. The social area. One of the symptoms is that people are not as supportive as you had hoped. People often tell me how hurt and surprised they are when the friends that they thought would be there for them just aren't after the death. Now, you have to understand these people still care about you, but often they just don't know what to do. And they may not even be aware that they're pulling back, but nevertheless, it affects their ability to support you. Friendships can change. When my father died, my mother reconnected with a high school classmate whose husband had also recently died. You might make new connections as a result of the death. I've had people tell me that they attended a grief support group and that became their new circle of friends. So, suggestions? One is to develop a new self-identity. Our identity changes with a loss. Part of our self-identity comes from the relationship we have with other people. I remember reading once that young people, talking about teenagers, it said they date in order to discover who they are. I mean, they think it's to find out about the other person, but it's actually for self-discovery too. In a similar way, our relationships with other people help to define who we are. And so when someone that we have a relationship with dies, it changes the way we see ourselves. We may have gone from being wife or husband to being widow or widower. We may have gone from being a parent to being a bereaved parent. The way you see the way that culture sees you too has changed, our society. And that's especially significant with the death of a spouse. Now you're no longer a couple, you're a single person. And people find that their couple friends just don't seem to know what to do with them. But also when the last parent dies, now you're an orphan. How do you deal with that? A death often requires us to take on new roles. You know, you confront this changed identity every time you have to do something that was done by this other person. After all, somebody still has to take out the garbage. Somebody has to take care of the finances, buy groceries, and so on. Maybe you had a lunch date with a special person who died, and now who's going to fill that spot? Often these changes can be positive. You may develop more confidence in yourself as you do things you didn't even know you could do. You may be forced to do them, and it's scary at first, but you find you can do them. And it may develop a more caring side of you, more sensitive, kind side. One man told me he didn't like going to funerals, so he didn't go to very many. But when his wife died, he was so touched by all the people that came to her funeral that he decided that he would go to more funerals to support others. You may develop a more assertive part of your identity that empowers you to go on living even though you continue to feel this sense of loss. We know how adversity often brings out the best in people. Well, working through a loss can do that too. Cherry Smith helped me put this presentation together. She did all the PowerPoint slides and graphics. And she had a story about her grandmother that I thought just really helped illustrate this point, and she gave me permission to use it. So I'm just going to read her story. Let me introduce you to my grandparents. This is Pearl Cherry and her husband Albert. My story is about Pearl's discovery of a new pearl and how that new pearl came to be. The Cherry family forms a long line of educators. My great-grandfather was the founder of the University of Kentucky. You'll find his statue on that campus today. When Albert and Pearl married, they moved west to Oklahoma to get away from their hick relatives. They continued the education tradition by setting up schools and churches in small communities throughout Kansas and Oklahoma in towns that needed them. They had a very good life together. Pearl's place was beside Albert and a little bit behind him. That was not uncommon in those days. Pearl wasn't included to handle any money or do any of the purchasing, including her own clothes. Albert died suddenly at the age of 53. This left Pearl unable to take care of herself in the beginning, but she made a verbal commitment to the rest of her family. She proclaimed as her first act alone, "I'm buying me some red shoes." Meet single Pearl. She called this her fat and happy picture. She moved from Oklahoma to Southern California to live with her son Richard and his family. She got her feet under her with some help from her boy. Then along comes the big Swede Axl Rhodes. What he saw in Pearl was someone she didn't even know existed. He saw a business partner. He had his own construction company. The two of them built homes together. The whole family was amazed at Pearl's transformation. She would talk with my dad about the stock market, leaving my dad shaking his head. Unbelievable. Axl died of a stroke when he and Pearl were in their 70s. She decided to move back to Oklahoma to live near her twin brother. She lived alone and took care of herself and everyone around her. She was a truly remarkable woman. It all started with a commitment to a simple pair of red shoes. She didn't have to decide who she was going to become. She just had to decide who she was today, a lady who wanted to buy her own clothes. That was a first step for her on the social level. She needed to develop a new self-identity. Fun side story, I was talking with my niece, Jennifer Pearl Lengi, Pearl's great-great-granddaughter. Jen just had a baby and named her Emery Pearl. See how important that lady is to her family. Everyone wants to be named after her in one form or another. I told Jen the story that I just shared with you. Jen had never heard the story. Jenny proudly showed me Emery's first pair of shoes. Find a grief buddy. Though no one will grieve exactly the way you do, there are others who maybe have gone through similar experiences. And a grief buddy is somebody who will also be mourning a loss, someone you can talk to, someone who needs a companion in grief right now themselves. And make a pact with them that you can call them and talk to them whenever one of you needs to talk. You might even commit to meeting together on a regular basis. Find others who had a special relationship with your loved one. There are probably other people who loved and are missing this person right now too. Others are affected by their death, like friends, neighbors, distant relatives, caregivers. Someone from my church whose wife died said, "Tell me stories about Karen." He loved it when people who knew her in a different level, different way, would talk to him about her. So he wanted to know how other people had been touched by her life. So is there somebody outside of your, circle of mourners who may be struggling with death? Perhaps you can connect with them, support them, as well as be supportive. When I was with hospice, we had a patient in one of the local nursing homes, and after she died, her husband kept going back there just for a chance to connect with the staff and other residents who had known his wife. And so we get to a point that we call reconciliation. There's two definitions, dictionary definitions of reconciliation: to bring into agreement or harmony, to make compatible or consistent, like to reconcile different statements, to reconcile accounts, or to cause a person to accept to be resigned to something not desired, like he was reconciled to his fate. How will we know when we have reached this point of reconciliation or the new normal? What is it that I have to look forward to? It can help to know what the end looks like. And so here is the signs of reconciliation from Dr. Wolfelt. First, a recognition of the reality and finality of the death. A return to stable eating and sleeping patterns. A renewed sense of release from the person who has died. You're still going to have thoughts about the person, but you'll not be preoccupied with those thoughts. The capacity to enjoy experiences in life that are normally enjoyable. One man told me he was getting better when he realized that he could taste food again. Before that, he just ate to keep himself alive. The establishment of new and healthy relationships. Sometimes there may be a hesitancy at first to establish new relationships because you fear losing someone else, or you think it might be better just not to. When you're ready for new relationships, then you'll know you have made progress. The capacity to live a full life without feelings of guilt or lack of self-respect. Sometimes people who are grieving feel like they shouldn't be happy and even feel pangs of guilt if they do. They see it as a sign of disrespect for the loved one who died. And so you've made progress. You've come to reconciliation when that is gone. The drive to organize and plan one's life towards the future. It's natural to look back and to think about your past with your loved one. But you know you're getting better when you can start looking at the future. The serenity to become comfortable with the way things are rather than attempting to make things the way they were. The versatility to welcome more change into your life. The awareness that you allowed yourself to grieve and you have survived. The awareness that you do not get over grief. Instead, you have a new reality, meaning, and purpose in your life. The acquaintance of new parts of yourself that you've discovered on your grief journey. The adjustment to new role changes that have resulted from the loss of the relationship. And finally, the acknowledgement that the pain of loss is an inherent part of life, resulting from the ability to give and to receive love. Again, I'd like to close with a song. This one's called I Will by Phil Volan and Steve Barda.
Every time I remember you really are gone, all my feelings rush in like I'll drown, and I fight to get hold of the promise I made, like a lifeline that's made out of sound. I will hold on to love, I will release the pain, I will live well until the time we meet again. Then as long and as loud or as soft as I need to, I repeat it like a chant or a song, till my balance comes back and my heart opens up, and I feel sure I can carry on. I will hold on to love, I will release the pain, I will live well until the time we meet again. Now the promise I made you is one that I'll keep, and as time heals with miles and with years, then this lifeline can stand as a tribute to you. When sweet memories grow stronger